Welcome to the Superbold podcast. I'm Fred Joyal, and my guest today is a hostage negotiator, but more importantly, an author and a teacher of negotiation. His name's Chris Voss, and he's written an amazing book that's a huge worldwide bestseller called Never Split the Difference: How to Negotiate as If Your Life Depends on It. And he started off as a policeman, then became a hostage negotiator working for the FBI with terrorists, with bank robbers, and eventually became the lead kidnap negotiator for the FBI before he branched out, left the FBI, and started teaching negotiation at universities around the country. Now has 2 masterclasses that he teaches it along with his book. And there was one other thing that stuck in my mind. I will get to it that you've done. You have a company that you actually advise people called the Black Swan Group, correct?
Right. For business negotiations, not hostage, for business negotiations.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's you're on the civilian side now with all of this stuff. So Chris, good friend of mine at this point. We've known each other for a few years, been following each other's careers. Really excited to have you on, Chris. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, pleasure to be on, man. An absolute pleasure. I appreciate your friendship.
So I talk a lot about boldness and because that's kind of what I'm teaching. And you've had a career where if people think their job is hard, and it's nothing compared to the pressure of the situations that you were in, because most of them were life and death, weren't they?
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, and like I negotiated when lives are on the line. People every day now are negotiating when their livelihoods are on the line. So there's a lot of same dynamics.
Yeah, and because now what you're talking about is, are you negotiating for a promotion or a raise, right? Or a divorce settlement, maybe, who knows? But a lot of your stuff is very counterintuitive, and that's what you're going to find if you read his book. To me, this is when people say, "What are the 5 books you recommend?" Chris's book is always in the top 3. This is stuff you need to understand, and we're gonna talk about some of these things, some of these very interesting counterintuitive thoughts, and why they require boldness. Because a lot of times your reflex is to do one thing, or your experience says, "Oh, I'm supposed to do this." Like I'm supposed to get a series of yeses. That's what a lot of people are taught, right? Is lead them along with yeses, and that's the opposite of what you teach. Actually, let's dive right into that, because people, when they say, "Wait a minute, that's basic, right? You're supposed to get a bunch of yeses."
Yeah, well, the problem with getting a bunch of yeses is that the flim flam artists do that too.
Yeah.
And so everybody out there has been bamboozled at one point in time by flim flam artists, probably more than once. And you have an instinctive negative reaction to the good person is getting yeses out of you, because the bad person burns you. Yeah, I think that's an African phrase. Once you've been bitten by a snake, you're scared of ropes. It's human nature to overreact in fear level. Your amygdala kicks into gear.
Yeah.
So you could be a good person helping people along with yeses. You are encountering someone, if they're older than 22 years old, they've already yes batted. Like my son Brandon has a clear memory of when he was like 9, somebody getting away from him one of his favorite sports cards over this yes bamboozling.
Yeah.
Like that gets burned into your gourd. So as soon as somebody else does the yes stuff, it's like trying to hug a battered child. You're a good person. You know that hugs are good for people. You raise your arms to hug a battered child, they're going to flinch anyway because they're battered. All human beings have been yes battered who are over the age of 22. They've been hustled so many times with this yes momentum nonsense that it immediately creates distrust.
It's so true. It's really the evolution of what's happened in sales. And as you say, this con artists are trained to do these things. They know how to flip human switches. And once that's happened to you, you are going to have that negative reaction to it. Um,
Yeah.
and so your solution really is to say, go for the opposite, correct?
Yeah, it's a combination of a couple things. One of the things that sold the book to HarperCollins in the first place, because I wrote a chapter about negotiation where you weren't driving for yes, you were driving for that's right, which is what people say when they're deeply understood.
Mm.
Now, in the interim, you may need a triggering call to action, a prompt to move a step forward. So then you just switch your yes question to a no question, no oriented, as we like to say. And it's as simple as is now a bad time to talk instead of have you got a few minutes.
Yeah.
Like it's really simple. It really is counterintuitive, makes people ridiculously uncomfortable. And there's still a lot of people out there I see on LinkedIn all the time. They're heavily criticizing that approach, which I love. I love
Right.
it
Yeah.
because that means that everybody that we coach are never going to lose their competitive advantage as long as there are bozos out there saying, don't do that, stick to yes. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Cool. People we coach are going to kill you and outdistance you and outcompete you. So yeah, keep putting that nonsense out there.
Yeah, it is really true. This is it's like sports teams using old advice that worked 20 years ago in basketball, and they refuse to learn the new one. So the other coaches are the coaches who have adapted say, we're just going to do it the new way. Let them please keep doing it the old way.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
just makes every game easier, and it's there's nothing manipulative about it to just say is is this a bad time for you to talk, because as you pointed out in your book, it's so comfortable for somebody to just say no. It feels very safe for them to
Yeah,
say no, uh,
yeah,
and
exactly.
and you can lead them along with that and find out what matters to them
Yeah,
using
yeah.
your
And
technique.
sometimes it feels so good to them, they'll help you. There's are you leading? Are you guiding? There's all these different euphemisms. But as soon as somebody says no, typically they're going to jump in and begin to collaborate with you, which is exactly what you want.
Yeah. You're both on the same side of the negotiation suddenly, which is great. Now I want
Exactly.
to swing back to your past a little bit, because
My
uh,
past.
your past, your checkered past, Chris,
My
uh,
checkered past.
where you were working in hostage negotiation and kidnap negotiation, and there were probably, especially I think in the when you were really starting to apply new techniques, uh, it, where did you come up with the boldness to try these things, knowing there was so much at risk? How did that feel to be doing that?
You never perform in a big game stuff you haven't practiced. Michael Jordan, he hits the game winning shot because he practiced it. Tiger Woods won all those Masters. I know he wasn't that good when he was out recently,
Yeah,
but Tiger Woods spent time on a practice tee. So I practiced. Like I used this stuff over and over again. And first of all, I had to practice. It wasn't really practice to become a hostage negotiator. They told me to go volunteer on a suicide hotline, which is really just the application of emotional intelligence. We didn't have those terms in those days.
yeah,
They started to call it crisis intervention, but it's just emotional intelligence. So I'd gotten all these real world results repetitions in on the hotline over and over and over. I knew the process was the best. The best doesn't mean it's infallible. Nothing's infallible. But when people change to something new, they're like, oh my God, I could see how this wouldn't work out. Well, yeah, the no oriented question works 999 times out of 1,000. And so those are the odds that are good enough. But some people would be like, holy cow, you mean sometimes it fails? Well,
No, I need
sometimes you get a different
foolproof
answer.
always, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like as
there
if
ain't no
anything
always
is,
on
right. Yeah.
it. Yeah. So I'd learned this emotional intelligence process. I knew enough about terrorism and kidnappers to know that the reality is they're still human beings. At the end of the day, we don't agree with what they're doing, but they're wired just like we are, believe it or not.
Hmm.
Human decision making does not change. Circumstances change,
Yeah.
but how we make up our mind doesn't. So I just relied on a process that I knew had the best chance of success and lived with it.
It's all right. So give me a time where you were sitting there saying, I know I have to say this to this guy. Um, and I'm taking a big chance here. I think people would want to hear because this is as high a pressure as it gets. What were those times? Give me the words you chose to say, and I want to talk about like that inner Chris that said, uh, "I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. I'm going to float this out there and get this."
Some of it was reflex, like
Yeah,
the Chase Manhattan Bank
yeah.
bank robbery, which was the first really big deal that I was involved in. Because bank robberies, where there's actual hostage negotiations, are unicorns. They're extremely rare.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen one time in the United States this year. That's how rare it is. It
Wow, that's
happens in
interesting.
the
Yeah,
U.S.
that's true. You never hear about it. There's bank robberies all the time. You don't even hear about them. There's so many. But where they actually start taking hostages because they've been trapped inside by the police.
Right. Well, where there's hostages and there's negotiation. Like theoretically, if there's anybody in the bank when they come in, they're all hostages. Bad guys want to get the hell out of there before the police show up. So, but I'm relying on basically just relying on reflex memory from results, repetitions, practice.
Hmm.
Like in the middle of this negotiation, I get great coaching. Also, you got to be coachable. I'm coached by the NYP. I'm being coached by the NYPD negotiation commander. He says, do this, this, and this. Confront this guy, confront him with your name. We're going to change up the strategy. I'd been there long enough. We were going out of the protocol, but I relied on his gut instinct. He had great gut instinct. So I'm scared to brace this guy head on with his name because he'd been keeping his name from us and we'd figured out who he was because he wanted to escape.
Mm-hmm.
So I start backing into his name because we got his vehicle, we got his registration, we ID'd him because of that. And he throws something at me that just like blows my mind. I basically I say, there's a van out here. We've identified all the drivers except one. And he goes, we got more than one vehicle. Now I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I didn't expect him to say that. So I just mirrored it. I repeated the words. You got more than one vehicle? He goes, yeah, because you chased my driver away. Now I'm flummoxed. I don't know nothing. And so we chased your driver away? Yeah, when he saw the police, he cut and run. Like that spontaneous admission implicated another bad guy that we didn't even know had ever been there. Like we didn't know that the getaway driver had got away.
He got
Because when
away.
he
The
showed up, he
wheelman got away. Yeah. So.
yeah, and so then ultimately I got some other stuff out of him in the short term. But it's not really so much that you're like, I want to say this, I want to say this. You prep for the moment. And then when your gut instinct says it's time to go, you say it. Or if your prep for the moment is to prepare in case you're caught off guard, then you lapse back into the skills and just let good things happen, and good things happen.
Yeah, and you've transferred this very powerful concept, and I talk about it as well in my book, which is the ability to just actively listen, to not be. I need to wait till he's done talking so I can say what I planned to say,
Right.
my protocol, my whatever. And this is true in hostage negotiation. It's also true in buying a car, right, or negotiating for a raise. So talk about how you explain active listening.
Well, it's actively, and then you kick it up the next level, proactively. Many people, they start listening when they're going for, aha, here's where you're wrong, the contradictory moments. All right, so at least now you're listening. You're not waiting for your turn to talk.
Yeah.
You've increased your listening game. You're actively listening, but you're actively listening to attack. That precise moment is also, instead of, aha, I gotcha, if you flip it to emotional intelligence, they've just said something that's important to you. So instead you go like, aha, it sounds really important to you. Now you're starting to take it up to the next level. You're gathering rapport, you're developing rapport, you're gathering information. That's kind of active. Now, proactive, what are we talking about this now? And it's really informed by neuroscience. We say tactical empathy is a calibrated application of emotional intelligence. What are we calibrating it with? We're calibrating it with neuroscience. Now, there's a difference between the way the world is and the way people are. The world is largely very positive, very supportive. There's a reason to be bold in the world because the world is basically on your side.
Yeah.
But people are basically negative. Your survival mechanism, and neuroscience backs this up, people are negative. So what am I proactively listening for? I'm listening for barriers. Instead of overcome those barriers, especially emotional barriers, I want to diffuse them or make those barriers reasons for doing things. And that's when you go from active to proactive. Now, I know that you're 75% negative. I also know from neuroscience broadly that when you're in a negative frame of mind, you're dumber. Sean Acker, a Harvard psychologist, has this great TED talk. I think it's called The Happiness Advantage or The Business of Happiness. He says you're 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind, which by definition means if you're in a negative frame of mind, you're dumber.
You're cognitively impaired. Absolutely.
You're cognitively impaired. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I know from neuroscience, if I just call out those negatives, if I just call out the elephant in the room, don't deny it, but call it out, that'll diffuse the negatives. So I'll say, in a hostage negotiation scenario, sounds like you feel backed into a corner here. And that'll begin to alleviate that internal stress. In a business scenario, when someone is getting really rattled, same thing, they're under pressure. Demanding, I need a price now. I need you to cut your price. I need you to comply now. I need you to change your terms now. The more adamant they get, sounds like you're under a lot of pressure. Because they're feeling pressure, they're in a negative frame of mind. And me calling it out like that begins to diffuse it, let some of the air out of the balloon without the balloon popping.
Yeah, it's a purely empathetic statement. It's not a debate.
Exactly. And empathy is a very misunderstood term these days. Empathy is not agreement, sympathy, or compassion. And in most cases, that's the way it's used in common vernacular.
Yeah, they use it as a synonym for sympathy, and it's not at all.
Exactly. And if you can draw that distinction, empathy is an emotional intelligence tool, then you could use it with anybody. Like you could put me on the phone right now with Vladimir Putin, and I could develop empathy with him because I'm not agreeing with him and I'm not sympathetic to him, but I could still use empathy.
Yeah. Yeah, you can say that I can see where you would feel this way, or why it's got to really suck to feel this way, or whatever. You're not saying, oh, it's too bad. I feel so sorry for you, or something like that, because that's sympathy. Right. That doesn't put you in parallel with the person, because they're going to say, no, I don't think you know how I feel. How you couldn't possibly know how I feel.
Right.
Empathy is not trying to say, I know how you feel, or worse, trying to make you feel better. Oh, you don't have to feel this bad. The people say the worst things at funerals. It's like, oh, she's in a better place now, or something like that. It's like, that is not helpful. That is, you just say, wow, grief is just one of the hardest things to go through. My heart goes out to you. And now all of a sudden you're being empathetic. You're saying, I can't even imagine how hard today is for you.
Exactly. Yeah, because then you're laying it out a little bit, like, and it's if you want to say to somebody, I could see how you would feel this way. Lay out what it is that you see.
Yeah.
Like if you would have talked to Vladimir Putin, you'd say, like, look, the reason why you guys are doing this is because all you guys got is oil and gas, and the entire world is trying to stop using oil and gas. And if you don't find another way to make a living, and Ukraine is full of food, it's a bread basket, one of the bread baskets of Europe. So you're just trying to feed your people. You're just trying to make sure that your people don't die in the cold and the dark. I didn't agree with any of that. I didn't say it was right, but this is some of the reasoning that Putin is telling himself.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he believes that the Soviet Union was stronger than the Russian Federation. You know, he
There you go.
remembers
There's another thing you could lay out.
Yeah.
You think the worst thing in the world that ever happened to Russia was the Soviet Union falling apart.
Yeah. So I'll get him on the next podcast, and now I know what to say.
You know, maybe we'll get him in an open forum. We'll get him on Twitter Spaces or something like that, right?
Yeah. So one of the other things that you do in negotiation is to make that person feel important or validated. Would you say that's one of the most effective things?
Yeah, and it's a sequence. When they feel validated or heard, then they feel important.
Mm.
And the neurochemicals in that cocktail of validation is insane. I mean, I listen to Andrew Huberman all the time because the guy just puts out very solid scientific data. And the neurochemicals, if you feel validated, if you feel understood, you get a combination of oxytocin and serotonin. When you get hit with oxytocin, you bond with whoever you're talking with. You're more likely to tell the truth. And then the kicker that I just heard last night, you feel satisfied. Which means
Wow.
your desire to ask for stuff is greatly diminished because you feel satisfied. So what else do you want in a negotiation for the other side to bond with you, to tell you the truth, and to feel less greedy?
Right, like they need to up the terms, like they got you to agree to something, so they need more. That to have them physically and emotionally actually feeling satisfied is an extraordinary achievement in a negotiation.
Yeah.
To shift that state. It's so. I love how so much of what you do is validated by neuroscience. It's a fascinating field to me as well. And I'm going to put Dr. Huberman's some links in the notes so people can find him, because I mean Chris and I are not just talking about theories we believe or impressions we have. It's validated by what he's done in his career. But when I'm teaching boldness to people, it's validated by neuroscience. When you are bold, when you start to feed your neural pathways with bold action, your hesitant neural pathways, they'll atrophy. And your default mode will be to step up instead of to step down or step back. Now, it's going to take time, but it's actually how your brain works, because it's getting a positive feedback loop from being bold. It's saying, wow, that actually went pretty well. I was pretty scared about trying that, about walking up to this attractive woman and introducing myself. And I actually had a nice conversation with her, and I would have imagined she would have stiff-armed me in a heartbeat. Or I saw, Jeff Bezos in this conference, and I decided to go talk to him, and it went really well. We had a regular conversation. All of a sudden, you've got new neural pathways that validate your worthiness. Because that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they're telling them this story about their own unworthiness. And bold people don't fall into that trap. And so it's so interesting when you talk about this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree completely. And it's something I actually, off the top of my head the other day, we're in an internal team meeting. I said, you got to listen to your intuition, not your amygdala. Now, your amygdala, and that's my neuroscience buddies, Andrew Huberman would say, like, it's a lot more complicated than just the amygdala. I'm like, okay, I know. It's just easier to understand this way. Like your amygdala is whispering in your ear, the amygdala hijack. Oh, this ain't going to work. It's the voice in your head on untested ideas. I'm not worthy. It's literally kind of a voice in your head.
Yeah, it is. It is because it's in control. It actually says stop, right? Don't
It's
do
yes.
this. Yeah.
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 Now your intuition is your gut.
Yeah.
Now your gut gets fed by your experience. And as soon as you start getting bold or being willing to put yourself out there to be bold, now you're feeding your gut. Your gut's got some data. Your
Yeah.
gut's like, oh, I tried this, it worked out. I tried it 2 times, it worked out. I tried it 3 times, and one time it didn't kind of work, but a 2-to-1 ratio is a good success ratio. I'll go to Vegas with those odds, and pretty much Steve Wynn will be picking me up in a car.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's your gut, feeding your gut with action so that you stop listening to your amygdala.
Yeah, and I tell people that you're going to still hear the voice a lot of times in your head, but you don't have to. You can hear it. You don't have to listen. It doesn't have to stop you. And and if you don't stop yourself, that's where the discovery comes from. And that's the big bonus is, and happens to bold people all the time, is they go in, they don't even know necessarily what's going to happen. And you probably develop some of this in hostage training. You say, let's in this safe environment, let's try this line of conversation or this line of questioning or interaction. This is a new way of saying it. And then you say, wow, I had no idea where this was going to go, but I see it. I see it as a new pathway, a more effective questioning or verbiage or wow, it triggered that, and I wasn't even expecting that, but I just threw it out there. And that's what part of boldness is about, is like there's all this discovery that happens. That's what entrepreneurs, they'll start a business, and it takes huge boldness to start it, and they'll find the marketplace thinks their product sucks except for one little aspect of it that they love. And the smart entrepreneur says, oh, I gotta work with that segment. Whereas the more hesitant person goes, oh, the market hates me, I need to get a job, right? I can't be an entrepreneur, I can't take this anymore. So they get, the bold person says, wait a minute, there was some information in here. In this colossal failure there was a flashing green light over in the corner. What does that mean? And they don't take they have emotional reaction. Oh crap, I failed. And then they move on rather than carry it for 20 years or let it control the direction of their life. And so let's go into your life a little bit. And you decided at some point that you were going to teach negotiation. Now you were breaking away from, you had a government job, Chris. Let's face it, you right.
With a pretty good salary, yeah.
Yeah.
For jobs across the board, the salary was good.
Yeah. And so I think it was a pretty bold move to say, no, what I learned applies to the business world. It applies to human beings in their daily lives. When did you know that was what you had to do?
Well, when I was still with the Bureau, I went through Harvard Law School's negotiation course, and instructors who were teaching, in a business context there said, like, look, you're doing the same stuff we are. It's exactly the same. The stakes are different, but all the dynamics are the same. So they started to encourage me along those lines. A part of the protocol for hostage negotiation in the FBI to stay sharp is to teach it. Because you got to take a deep dive into something because you're scared somebody's going to call you out. You better know what you're talking about. So, I had a lot of practice teaching already. And I just needed, like every human being, Never take advice from somebody you wouldn't trade places with. I'd have traded places with those Harvard Law School negotiation instructors. So these are people I should be listening to because I would trade places with them. Like if somebody, and at the same time, there was an NYPD hostage negotiator who was trying to make it, but he wasn't making it. And so while he was doing what I wanted to do, he wasn't succeeding. So I'm not looking to advice from him.
Right.
I'm looking to advice from people that are succeeding. So that, they said you're on the right track. And I already understood teaching, so started to adapt. And then actually the real good kicker was I caught a break, and you catch breaks because you listen to people.
Yeah. A lot of people think, oh, you just got lucky. It's like, yeah, except my radar was on full blast. My
Yeah.
mind was open and I was listening and looking and observing and paying attention. I mean, life is an awareness test, right? And a lot
Yeah.
of people are getting a D's and F's on that. And
Right.
and so you were something said there's more here, and you heard it, uh, and saw the direction.
And then I caught a break from a guy
Yeah,
who he'd been generous to me, and he'd done me favors. I'd done him favors. He was teaching negotiation at MIT. I've been a guest speaker for him, gratis. He was a good guy.
yeah.
And he said, "Look, I'll sign us up to teach it. I'll put us in to be the instructors for a course at Harvard. I'm qualified. I'll put you down as a co-lecturer because of my credentials. I'll get you in the door. We'll teach off my syllabus. I know your stories. You and I have talked a lot. I know what your stories show. At the appropriate moment when I'm teaching, I'm going to point to you and I'm going to say, tell this story, and it'll fit." And I'm like, awesome. And the reason he was a good guy, we had great collaborations before. He was a learner, and he was the guy that gave me a break because I'd been listening to him previously. I'd taken his guidance. I was smart enough to realize that he was doing what I wanted to do. And then, if there's reason for me to listen to you, I'm going to listen. I'm going to let you take the lead. And that was really the biggest difference. That course went over really well. It gave me the credential that I needed, and things started to happen after that.
Well, the other thing that was in that is there was the format for your book, and your teaching was here's and now if you haven't read Chris's book, this is the other reason why you have to read it. He starts every chapter with a real life hostage negotiation situation, and then he translates it into a regular business or personal situation. So he knew to turn to you and say, tell this story about that. And then he would say, this is how that applies into the business world. And there was your format, which to me makes your book so readable, because it's like, I get it in a second. I get every point that you make immediately as you go through the chapters. So it was fascinating that opportunity gave you the best way to teach, because as we say, teach with stories, but these are very crucial stories. These are not just good anecdotes in the book.
Thank you. Yeah. The book's done well. I'm really proud of how it's done.
And so you've evolved it into a couple of master classes, and which is Chris has a ton of great content online. It's everywhere for you to really benefit from. I started reading some of his blogs recently, and I thought, I have to stop because these are all so good. I'm going to blow the whole day reading these things, because every one of them was so concise and insightful. But what prompted the masterclass? How did you get drawn into that?
Yeah, they approached us. Some of their folks had read the book. They were applying it in their world, and they said, "Hey, we'll put together. Let's do a class." We went back and forth, and we ultimately worked it out. And we've ended up so far. There's only 2 people on our platform. I think that they've asked twice. I guess I'm neck and neck with Gordon Ramsay.
Oh,
I don't
nice,
know what that
nice.
tells you,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
they
I don't
did.
know what it tells me either. I can't interpret that one. So,
He's entertaining, and he can cook, and he can probably teach you how to cook.
yeah.
But we did the basic course. They wanted to get the essentials. Basic is even a word that diminishes how valuable this stuff is. They did a great course, just me teaching the essential aspects of the concept,
The foundational principles, I think, would be,
translational principles.
yeah.
Yeah, and then they came back, 2 years later, and they said, let's do some stuff on salary negotiation.
Hmm.
So I brought my team in, and the salary negotiation stuff is so valuable that you got to listen to it a couple of times to get the nuances of it. I mean, even when we simulated them in live negotiations with each other, I didn't fully understand the victories and the subtleties of the victories in it. So yeah, the salary negotiation stuff, and then they got an entire learning platform where they're creating a learning community within it. I mean, it's cool stuff. I'm very impressed with Masterclass.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole new world. I love the way education is going. I think the universities are and undergrad is or elementary and high school, they're going kicking and screaming into these changes, but they're coming. I mean, you can listen to an MIT professor, you can listen to a Stanford professor, you can get that level of education sitting, in a hut in Zimbabwe. I mean, that's an amazing thing, and you can take Chris Voss's class and really and watch the video 3 times so you say, I get it now. Because everybody I tell to read your book, I say, and don't just read it once, because it's so counterintuitive in so many places, you're not going to start to apply it. So you're going to have to read it again 6 months later and go, what? That chapter wasn't here before. I don't remember that at all, because so many of these things knocked you off of your linear belief about negotiations. But once you start to have those successes, go back, re-listen, relearn, and that's the beauty of the master class. Is like, it's almost like the Khan Academy is like, keep listening till you get it, right? Till you keep adding to these layers. But
Very good. Yeah.
and it's fascinating that salary negotiation is obviously, that's, you don't get to do it that often. So how do you get good at it? And so this is a beautiful thing for people to tap into, especially in a marketplace that's where people. I mean, I know so many young people right now who, like, at 2.5 years, they're like thinking about their next job. It's like you and I, we thought in 20-year cycles of our careers. That's like 2.5. It's like, oh my God, I've been in this place 2.5 years. I gotta jump. I gotta move on. So you're going to need this life skill if you're going to change careers every couple of years, or change positions, or work your way up the corporate ladder. You're going to need to know how to do this stuff. This is a great life skill.
Amen.
Uh, and so, what's next? What's the next bold move from Chris Voss that we can anticipate here?
Well, several things on the horizon. We got a documentary film coming out. It's going to, we're doing a premiere in Los Angeles on September the 26th. Nick Nanton, DNA Films. He's won 22 Emmys. I haven't seen it yet. He tells me it's good. He says it's gritty. Looking forward to seeing what happens with that. We got a book for real estate agents, residential real estate agents. Been collaborating with a guy named Steve Scholl. That book should be out ideally in November.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
then we got the Tactical Empathy Operations Manual that we're working on. That's probably about a year away. And then we're coaching people. We're still learning. We're still creating new stuff within the method. Like, I'm every time when I think we've got as far as we go, it's not the mountaintop, it's a plateau, and we
Yeah.
learn more.
Well, and
And so,
neuroscience keeps expanding too. And it's like every time you hear that, you say, like, some new insight into neuroscience, you say, oh, that's why that makes sense. That's why that worked. And
Exactly.
then you can expand on it and feel more validated as you present it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that you're still looking for that next great gem of information that you can pass on.
Yeah, and we're still training in person too. I mean, now that the pandemic is, for all intents and purposes, not stopping our activities, we're going back to in-person events. Like if you subscribe to the newsletter, the blog that you were talking about before, you're going to get the notifications of when we're doing our live trainings too. So I'd be happy to tell people the easiest way to subscribe.
Yeah, by all means, let's do that right now.
So if you're in the U.S., text to sign up. The number you text to is 33777, 33777. Send a text, Black Swan Method, 3 words, not case sensitive, spaces between each word. Black Swan Method to 33777. You get a response back asking you for your email. The blog is free.
Yeah,
But what you said before is what I love about it. I mean, there's actionable information there. It's not valuable because it's free. It's valuable because it's actionable.
yeah,
The blog, the newsletter is a gateway to the website, which is a gold mine. And also, you get notifications of our new courses and things like that with the blog. Not a million notifications because it's too much is too much.
yeah.
But ultimately, you get to the website, blackswanltd.com. That is a gold mine. We got a massive amount of free information there.
Yeah. And you could, if you're confused, chrisvoss.com will start you on your pathway to finding him.
But wait a minute. No, it's not chrisvoss.com.
It's not.
No.
Oh, all right.
It's Black
Oh,
Swan
it's Black Swan
Ltd.
Ltd. Black Swan Ltd. But if I
Black
Googled
Company.
you, Black Swan Ltd. would come up in the Google search.
I hope so.
Oh,
I hope so.
I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I've done it a
There's
couple of
another Chris Voss out there. It's not me. And the dude has actually asked me to change my name
times.
because so many people find him when they're looking for me. He finds it irritating.
I'm sure. I'm sure. But, and obviously you can go to Amazon and find his book, which you need to get the audio or Kindle or hardcover immediately. And tie into this because it's going to change your approach to life. Nothing less than that. And as I teach people how to be more and more bold, I also try to teach them these are the things you say. These are the things you try. This is how you change your mindset. Where you start to try new things. If you want different results in your life, you have to do something differently. You can't hope the world's going to change. And so when you learn these techniques as you approach your life more boldly, you need the tools, you need the techniques, you need to understand human nature. You need to understand the neuroscience behind those reactions so that as you go out and try to chase your dreams, as you go out and try to have greater impact, as you the situation comes up when you need to step up because it really matters, whatever that is, whether it's, finding the mate of your dreams or the job of your dreams or starting your own business or giving a eulogy for a friend. You need to step up. And you want the boldness skills for that.
Yeah, and let me add to that, if I may, to put my 2 cents worth in on why people should do that. So my basic belief is that 70% of the time it's going to work out. And I've seen a number of different things that let me put the figure at 7 out of 10 times being bold is going to go exactly how you want it. All right, so we live in a Las Vegas world. 70% win rate, and you own Vegas. The casinos win on a 51% win rate.
Exactly.
And they're billionaires. 51% win rate will make you a billionaire. Think of what 70% will do. Now, but at the same time, that means that 3 times, 2 times, 1 time, 1 to 3 times out of 10, it's going bad. Now that'll stop you because your amygdala will kick into gear and you will ignore the fact that you were successful 7 out of 10 times. 7 out of 10 times, Major League Baseball. If you get a hit 3 out of 10 times, you're making $100 million a year. If you're in the NFL and you're completing your 7 out of 10 of your passes, your quarterback is making $100 million a year. 7 out of 10 times will make you not just a millionaire, but a billionaire. As long as you don't let your amygdala get in the way, because it's going to go bad occasionally. I don't know anybody that it hasn't gone bad. And when it goes bad, it makes them smarter. They don't quit.
Yeah.
So just don't quit.
Yeah. I mean, that's really it. It's only a failure if you decide to stop. If you decide to not learn from it, and it becomes your decision to not keep trying. And
I don't know if you know Molly Bloom. You should get Molly Bloom on your podcast because Molly has a saying, you can't lose if you don't quit. And she's worth listening to.
Yeah, she's the poker player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was.
Yeah. No, she had a nice career in that. Well, Chris, thank you so much. This has been highly invaluable. Again, I couldn't recommend his material higher. You need to tap into Chris Voss. He needs to be part of your permanent life educational repertoire. And my friend, I can't wait to discover what's next with you. And I'm going to keep applying what I've learned from you so far. So thank you so much.
Pleasure is mine, Fred. It's all my pleasure. I'm grateful that we're friends.
All right, everybody, keep on being bold and keep on growing and learning.
Amen.